Well, hello. Just some words to help us look forward to week 2. In Module 2, we turn to the subject of regionalism. Now, our module overview suggests that regionalism grew from, in part at least, from the fragmentation of the country in the post-Civil War era. In a way, of course, this is true, but the claim itself that suggests that there was something like unity prior to the Civil War, and culturally, this is simply just not true. The consensus from 19th century critics is exactly the opposite. They felt like there had never been anything like a unified culture in the U.S., and they regularly debated whether or not it would or should happen. One of the big questions of that time was whether or not there would in fact ever be something that could be called American literature. Something that would represent the U.S. As a nation, as a whole. Some saw this as something to be, something to be sought after. It was a goal that, at the time when they could say there was an American literature, then they could say that we had arrived as a people. And then others said, just the opposite, that they said that the variety, the diversity represented in American literature through essentially through regionalism was essential and inherent to the spirit of the U.S. That's what we were about, was again the many out or the one out of many. I'll get that right. So when we talk about regionalism, what we mean is that in different areas of the country, writers developed identifiable styles which included subject matter specific to the geographical location. Simple enough. For our purposes, we're going to approach this with the hypothesis that regionalism can be approached as a kind of a localized instance of realism. However, I'll give you my caveat again, which is that this is not totally accepted as as true. It's just, there are different thoughts on what regionalism is, just as there's different thoughts on realism and naturalism. Many critics think of regionalism as something entirely separate from realism. They attach it to, if anything, more closely to romanticism. Also, there's been much work done on specific areas of regionalism, dealing with the literature from a particular area of the country, where they see regionalism as a particularly feminine or even feminist style. And I'll have some different materials for you to look at on that regard for this coming week. I'll also have some additional reading to look at from another of our regionalist authors, Hamlin Garland. The selections provided with our course this module, I think, are a little odd, not least of all because they date from the early 20th century. So I want to share something that's more appropriate for the time period that we're focusing on, and I also want to give an example of Garland's criticism, which actually talks about regionalism as realism. As long as I'm being critical, I also wanted to touch on this week's workshop prompt. It follows the information in our overview, which offers that the post-Civil War South did not have a great representation of realism in regard to the rank-and-file white citizens. I find this assertion problematic in a number of ways, not least of all because I don't think it's true. I can see the different threads of thought coming together with this claim, and again, it's an outright claim. They're making an assertion about this is what was happening in literature, and I can make excuses for why it comes out like it does, but in the end, I think it is muddy and misleading. Uh, so, for myself, I'm definitely will make recommendations that our course designers put some more thought into adding some, what I would think, some subtlety to future versions of this prompt. Um, on the other hand, the fact that I find it provocative means that I expect that probably you will too. And that's good for the purposes of spawning discussion, which is exactly what it's supposed to do. Um, so I look forward to your responses for it, and I expect they'll be lively. Again, I've already shown my cards and said how I feel about it. So I don't want to discourage you from arguing with me ever, because I am certainly not going to shy away from arguing with you. Um, but be prepared if you're going to take an opposite stance, because I'm definitely, well, let's just say I think I'm right on this one. Uh, Speaking of the workshops, this next week we'll begin our, our work in smaller, more focused discussion groups. Essentially, probably this Sunday, I'll split the class up into groups of 4 or 5, and most of our discussions will then take place within those groups. The groups will talk separately from one another. The idea in this is that, in a class-wide discussion, it can be overwhelming when you have, when you have 14, 15, I have classes occasionally ranging upward to 20. When you have that many people all trying to have conversations and trying to, see what's going on. And, you know, uh, the idea in splitting it up into smaller groups is just to enable you to concentrate on what's going on, and have more personal conversations about this topic. Um, the idea is to enhance the learning environment. Also, remember that this coming week you'll need to posit your thesis for this term's research paper. So keep thinking and skimming and working on that. And if you want to bounce ideas off me, you are absolutely more than welcome to do so. As always, if you have problems or would like to talk about anything, let me know, and we'll do that, because, that's what I'm here for. So, till next week,